Thank you very much for the host for allowing us here to come and share with you some of the insights we have about the future. Can you imagine what the future is going to look like in about 20, 30 years from now? You know, it's incredible how everything is moving at such an exponential speed. Just since November until now, look at how much change has happened in the field of artificial intelligence. The introduction of large language models like ChatGPT, Bard, and so on. So this thing has started a whole revolution, a whole race to AI that hasn't been before in our lifetime. At the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, people were very concerned that automation is going to take a lot of the jobs from humans. And in fact, maybe initially it did. But then on the long term, it resulted in much more jobs. It increased economies. It made people's lives much easier. Robotics now are becoming much more dexterous, much more capable. They're definitely going to be taking a lot of the jobs compared to that. But that's, again, people will be retooling and working on other topics. The challenge now is for the first time in history, we are competing on intellect, not only in manual labor. So I can tell you, jobs like medical doctors, engineers, accountants, lawyers. Look at the medical field, for example. Right now, artificial intelligence systems can do a better job than some of the most experienced radiologists. It could actually create medications in a fraction of the time. Look at protein folding. Protein folding is basically understanding the structures of protein, and that helps us in developing medications, vaccines, and so on. So just to give you an example, if you have a PhD student trying to work on protein folding, it's going to take him his whole career, his whole 5 years of college to come up with that. AlphaFold came up with 200 million proteins, the structures, and now it's going to help us substantially creating that paradigm. Everything we're seeing right now actually is still at the baby stages. So a lot of people are criticizing artificial intelligence that cannot do this, it's making mistakes, there's challenges. Of course, we're talking about its baby. Just wait until this baby grows up a little bit, and then the capabilities will be completely beyond our expectations, especially when we reach the super artificial intelligence paradigm. And artificial intelligence is no longer just a technology on the side. It will be the foundational technology in which almost every single thing in society and economies will be built in the future. We've been exploring a lot of topics when it comes to artificial intelligence, and some of the recent discussions we've been having is, should robots have rights? And that seems like a silly question almost. What do you mean robots have rights? I'm going to show you a quick parody done by Boston Dynamics. Just a quick question by raise of hand. Anybody felt bad for this thing here, this robot? Yeah. So this is, it's just bolts and cables. So imagine when that robot looks like this. Imagine when that robot looks like this and has a personality and mimics your personality. So it's adaptable according to who's talking to. It's a whole different story. So the question of should have right and how do they incorporate into society, it's more challenging than we expect from now on. And the cool thing about robots only, and artificial intelligence in general, is going to be the collective learning elements of it. Us as humans, we learn. It's individual learning. When, for example, talking about advanced systems, robots, artificial intelligence, whatever, for example, we have 1 million cars in the street, driverless cars. Whatever a single car learns, all the other ones will learn at the same time. So the advancement in exponential learning, it's going to be beyond anything else, and that's going to be also a capability that's different. But even we should go back to the fundamentals of robotics. So the Asimov laws since the beginning have always said that a robot should not injure a human, which makes a lot of sense. But then think about it. When these robots become humanoid, dexterous, and capable of being surgeons, the fact I'm going to put an incision on you, that means I'm hurting a human. So we need to reevaluate the definitions and laws that we had from robotics to be able to be adaptable to everything that's going to be happening in the future. But also the state of society is changing as well. I remember when we used to be young, we had more personal interactions with each other, and then now, next generations is starting to actually become more communicating with each other, social media. But then the last phase will be, we'll be interacting with artificial intelligence entities way more than we actually interact with humans. And imagine, again, combining this intellectual capability and then combining them with humanoid robots, and it has an incredible impact on society. But also our physical bodies. I mean, I think we will be evolved eventually, according to the technology, we'll be immersing ourselves for hundreds and thousands of years. Look, for example, how much we spend time kind of hunched over, grabbing our hand, our impact on vision. But the main thing I'm worried about is actually our intellectual capability, our minds. They've done a study, it indicated that people that stop driving after a certain age, their intellectual capability went down substantially. So imagine when we start driving, and we start using driverless cars, when we start depending on artificial intelligence to make a lot of the decisions for us. What is the impact, a long-term impact on our minds? How is the evolution of the human mind going to be in the thousands of years moving forward? Is it going to be diminishing? Is it going to be changing the way we are as humans? Also, these are questions that we need to be exploring. So we talked about the impact of artificial intelligence to be able to displace substantial amount of jobs. It's going to create jobs, obviously, but in the long term, the more we get to the extremely advanced phases, it's going to be displacing more jobs more than it's be creating. At the same time, population is going to be increasing. Although all the models we have right now, they're built on static models, basically saying that Europe is going down, Africa is going up. But in general, people will be living substantially longer compared to what we have right now. And once you take advantage of the hallmarks of aging that we're having right now, it's no longer science fiction, it's reality. We're understanding the facts, what causes us humans to age. And actually, aging has been classified as a disease. That means if it's a disease, it could be potentially be treated or managed. So look, for example, the telomere shortening, the epigenetic noise that we have in our cells, the senescent cells, all these elements and hallmarks of aging, we're trying to find solutions. And one day, potentially, we'll be slowing down, if not completely stopping the aging process of humans. Combined with artificial intelligence, not only going to be able to produce medications, individualized medications as well. According to genetic composition, it doesn't make sense to give you the same people, the same medication, because all of us are different. And then predictive analytics. I'll be able to tell you that you're going to have a disease way before you have a disease. So imagine that's even one step ahead of managing disease. 3D printed organs will be printed human organs based on your genetic composition, and then at the end, we're going to have also nanobots that will be augmenting your immunity system. So between all that stuff, I think I would anticipate that a kid being born today, he will have an average lifespan potentially in 130s, 135, 140, and so on. So if that is the case, then what does the future economy look like? If the retirement system is based on people having an average lifespan until the 80s, then automatically the whole thing doesn't work anymore. Look at the economic system. When we have billions and billions of people that do not have jobs, because once we reach the extremely advanced phases of artificial intelligence, a lot of the majority of the jobs could be potentially displaced. Right now, it's a phase where actually is augmenting our jobs, making our jobs much more efficient. But then the more advanced they become, then the displacement, not making people make better decisions and better at the job, but potentially displacing. So the whole economic model needs to be completely evaluated. The compensation as well, compensation versus productivity. Until the 70s, productivity and compensation used to be linear. And then now, productivity is increasing substantially at an exponential rate. But again, when the compensation is not catching up with it, what is the long impact of society with that? Institutions, right now, I talk to people in Silicon Valley, and they tell me, we're getting graduates from Stanford, from a lot of universities, and they're not up to speed with what's going on. So there's a shift right now, not only hiring people with degrees, but hiring people with skills. The academic institutions need to do a much better job at augmenting and changing their curriculum in a much, much faster way compared to what we've been doing it. Otherwise, we'll be producing graduates that are not ready for the job market. But also, the cool thing about all these technologies we're having is they're becoming transversal across all the industries. Look at 3D printed, for example. We used to print brackets, bolts. Now we can print engines. We can build houses at a fraction of the time, fraction of the cost. We can print jet engines. We can do clothing with it, actually individualized according to each one of us. We can do organs. We can print food. And for us, obviously, we cannot go to space without actually leveraging substantially on 3D printed technologies, because we cannot take all the spare parts with us. One of the biggest challenges we have is, as humans, we have evolved actually to think in linear fashion. We were farmers, we were hunters, and things change very, very, very slowly. The challenge now is we're living in an exponential world. And unless we start jumping and training ourselves to think from a linear fashion to an exponential way of thinking, it's going to be a challenge for us to be adaptable to what's going on in the future. And then all the skills that we've learned and that made us successful until now, they're not necessarily going to be the same skills making us successful in the future. We need to adapt and change as we move forward. And then when we're strategizing about the future, we should not anchor ourselves with the limitations we have today. So today we have a lot of limitations, and if you're strategizing for something in 5 years, you need to start looking ahead and what's going to happen, how is technology evolving, and then take this into consideration when strategizing in the future, because otherwise it's going to be very challenging. You can learn from a lot of elements from number of publications, from patents, from startups, and start giving you a hint where technology and what challenges will be resolved in the near future. It's essential we start working with startups as well. A lot of technologies already exist. We work for them sometimes for years. We spend millions of dollars when in fact it's already solved with somebody else as a startup. So we need to be visionaries. We need to start looking at the whole landscape in a whole different parameters and connect the dots in ways we haven't connected them before. That is the only way we're going to lead the competition and be able to make a difference. And obviously, you cannot just copy and paste something, artificial intelligence, I'm going to just copy something happening somewhere into my industry. You need to copy, you need to adapt, modify, change according to your culture, according to your industry, and then start doing programs and build on the momentum of success. So something works, take momentum, amplify it. Something doesn't work, start narrowing it down, and that's how you keep moving with that. Diversity is very essential. Breaking away from the groupthink, I think that's one of the biggest killers you have in every single organization. I can have right now a meeting with 50 engineers, and the ideas will come from that. The group is going to be very, very limited. Look at this is an example of a bike company in the Netherlands. It's an electric bike company. And what they were doing is when they were shipping these bikes, the majority of them were being damaged and being returned. So obviously, they gathered all the technical community and the engineers. And the first thing as an engineer, what do? Well, I'm going to make that section thicker. I'm going to change the material from plastic to aluminum, maybe. Of course, this is what we have taught to think as engineers. But then a non-technical person thought, well, instead of looking into this, why don't we just go to the box where these things are shipped and print a copy of a TV? So people shipping them, they will think they're transporting a TV. Less than 5 cents cost and completely resolve the issue. That is the power of thinking differently in a different way. There is a nice concept derived from biology called acceptation. Acceptation basically is a concept that tells you that something was created or invented for a function, and then it was co-opted for a whole different use. An example here actually comes the birds. So the feathers in the birds were never intended for flying. They were actually intended for thermoregulation, and the colorful feathers were intended for mating and so on. But biology it did not intend for feathers to be used for flying. So that's the same thing. How can we use something that was invented for a function and then think about it in completely different ways of use? Look, for example, in space, how we use the image processing that we resulted from landing on the moon to be the core foundational technology for CT scans, MRIs. There is technology that was used in astronomy for the Hubble telescope to reduce the noise. The same technology was adapted in the medical field to be able to do pathology in a fraction of a time. So all these things are making a lot of difference. But we continue to learn from nature and see how can we accept things from nature into our technologies. This is a phenomenon called starling murmurations, where we have thousands of birds flying at the same time and never hitting each other. It's incredible how they communicate. It's not an understood phenomenon until now. But imagine if you can learn what causes these things to navigate. In the future, our skies are going to be filled with flying cars. It's going to be filled with delivery drones everywhere. So it will be amazing if you can actually change from nature and understand to be able to produce better things. The way and the time of being proactive is the only way. Reactive doesn't going to take you anymore. You're always going to be proactive, thinking about front of the head, and take some risk. If you don't take risks, it's not going to go anywhere. And failure is okay. Keep failing, making mistakes. Obviously, at the end, you cannot fail at the end product, but before you reach there is a lot of things you can learn from, and actually, that's I'm encouraged to do. The other day, I was watching a documentary on Netflix, and it tells you, ask this guy that produces the best soy sauce in the world, and ask him, what is his secret for creating the best soy sauce? I said, I have no secret. This is nothing. I'm not doing anything. I just create the best environment for these microorganisms to live, and they do the best everything by themselves. And I keep thinking, isn't that what we need to do? We need to create environment in organizations that enable people to think differently, enable people to think out of the box, to be creative, and to look into things in a different context. I think that is going to be a very successful thing moving forward across the board. And then when we look at the forest, typically we think there are individualized trees, just next to each other. In fact, it's a whole ecosystem. It's connected under the ground with a web of fungus that actually communicate between them. Sometimes they interchange nutrition. There have been studies that tells you that potentially they can, prevent each other and when there's infestations and create toxins. So we should do the same thing. We should look at the whole ecosystem. You should work between government, between industry, academia, and form alliances to be able to solve very big challenges that will be impossible for us to solve by itself. When astronauts go to space, they look at the planet as a single entity. They don't see borders. They don't see countries. They just see a single beautiful planet, and this is called the overview effect. So imagine if you pull yourself from your industry, go outside, look what's happening geopolitically, what's happening technologically, what's happening across other sectors, other economies, other industries, what's happening with your competition, and then you come back at your industry. I think you're going to have a completely different view of things that will enable you to become substantially more successful in every single thing that we do. So imagine if we put our collective intellect together across all industries, across academia, government, industries, different regions, different cultures, to solve some of the world's most challenging problems. I think the limitations will be diminished and the possibilities will be endless. Thank you very much.